I have a Dell Inspiron 15 Series 3000 laptop. In my case, it's a Inspiron Series 3555 with 6 megabyte of RAM and a bad DC jack and 2.2 gigahertz processor. And so I'm replacing the DC jack and updating the RAM. I've included a couple of links in the description below that were really helpful to follow. In my case, I was fortunate enough to have another laptop to view these videos on so I saved them to this other second laptop and basically had them offline and viewed them as I did my repair, and that worked really well. So I'm providing also some decent images of the inside of the Inspiron 15 Series 3555 laptop as well, and then I'm also including some of the error messages. And I had two chargers I used, so the original Dell charger, and then with problems that I was having with the DC jack, I bought a second replacement charger, and thinking that was the problem because you have to rule it out somewhere, and I was hoping it wasn't the DC jack. So I connected that as well to see if I had the same problems, and so I'm going to show the images I have here, and then also I reference again those links to the videos because they were real helpful step by step, and these guys are experts, and so I just followed the experts through the repair, and then was real careful, and just in case took some images so if I did anything I could refer to it and come back to it. So for anyone who's ever had this problem with a Dell laptop and a DC jack, when they plug their AC adapter into their DC jack, I'm going to try and give an idea what happens, or what I saw anyway, and I'm thinking that your experience will be something similar. So when I plugged in the AC adapter into my DC jack, immediately I got an error message, and the error message basically told me that it did not recognize my AC adapter charger. And so I also looked at how it affected the processor speed. It cut the processor speed down in half, which is not good. So I have a 2.2 gigahertz processor, and it's cut it down to like less than 1 gigahertz almost consistently. And so I decided, well, I don't know if it's the DC adapter from the Dell side. So I basically found online a brand new AC adapter, and wanted to see if I could at least just replace the AC adapter and be done with it. And so I plugged in a new AC adapter and got the same problem. The AC adapter charger wasn't recognized again, and processor speed is going to be slowed down, and so it looks like it's always plugged in, but it doesn't charge the battery, and so that's the problem. So I really suspecting that I have a bad DC jack, which is not really something I want to have to change. And I'm not an expert here, so I'm just going to tell you that. So I do have some tools I work on with computers from time to time, but nothing along this level. And so I was able to find some good videos online, and so I referenced those down in the description area. And the tools I used were just basically small screwdrivers and some pry tools, a set of tweezers, real careful not to touch anything with those except just to lift up things, and some other and also a static wrist band to maybe discharge anything that might be coming in contact with the motherboard. I don't want to cause a problem there. And then at that point I use these tools to remove all the screws on the bottom reverse side of the laptop, the base of the laptop. There's 9 screws that surround the bottom cover, and then once I had those out, I got to remove the CD drive as well. So there's one CD drive screw in the middle of the base of the laptop, and then also in the battery well there is a flat screw there as well, and so I had to remove that. And then once you can use simply a pry tool to slide out or to kind of move out the CD or the DVD drive move it out of there, out of the bay. And so I use the pry tool, and it pops out once that screw is out that holds it in. And then once the DVD drive is out, you'll see 3 screws, or I saw 3 screws on the lip of where the drive bay is for the DVD drive. And so I've had to remove those 3 screws as well. And so that holds everything to the motherboard as well. So you're trying to get the goal is to get all the screws out that would hold the bottom case to the motherboard, and also be able to get access to the inside of the computer. And so once I did that, then what I wanted to do next was follow the videos to get the keyboard. So I flipped over the computer to the top side, and I don't have pictures for that really because the videos did a good job. So I just basically flipped it over, used the pry tools, and removed the keyboard from the top of the computer, and then at that point disconnect all the ribbon cables as it describes so that the keyboard could be lifted off. And once I have the keyboard lifted off, I can then flip the computer back over, and the bottom case will come off. Okay, and so then I pick up with that situation where the bottom case is off, and I'm now going to show some images of the inside of the computer. And so with that in mind, I'm going to just basically pick up with showing that I have to remove the wireless card, and there's some antennas attached to that wireless card, and then there's also a wireless card screw. So you have to remove those, and then there's also a hard drive ribbon cable that has a clamp on it. So you have to lift the clamp up and then be able to remove that cable out from underneath the clamp. And then I'm going to replace the RAM modules on my laptop as well, since I have all this exposed, and really don't want to have to go back in just to do this, change out the RAM. So since I have everything off and opened up, I'm just going to replace the RAM. I had 6 gigabyte of RAM. I'm going to replace it with 2 8 gigabyte modules. So I'll have 16 gigabyte. That's the maximum for this computer. And then once I have those taken out, then the next step, or the next goal, is to start looking at some screws that also have to be removed. And there's one motherboard screw for this particular laptop. That's all there is. Some have more than that, but this one only has 1. And so I'll have to remove the motherboard screw. And so I'm just kind of getting a feel for what screws have to be removed, and what ribbon cable have to be removed, or the clamps that hold down those ribbon cables. And so then basically going to remove the antenna from the wireless card, and then the screw that holds that wireless card in, and then I'm going to remove the wireless card itself out off the base of this motherboard. And then the goal is now to take a look at the DC jack. So I know I'm suspecting the DC jack is a problem, so I basically going to look at that. It's right next to the battery well, and so looking at that, there's a screw there that holds a hinge down that covers this DC jack. And so I'm going to remove that screw, and then I'm also just going to look at the cable itself and see how the cable looks and how it is run. So I'll have to put it back when I'm done. So I'm taking a look at those things as well. And then I notice as I get the hinge up on the DC jack itself, there is a screw that holds the DC jack in place, which is, from the outside in, you're hooking your AC adapter into this DC jack. So the DC jack, if it wasn't held in place with this little screw, it would be moving around. But also, if the DC jack is broken and the wires are broken, which in my case they are now, I can see that, it also will move around. And the only thing that's keeping this thing in place now is this little DC jack screw. So I'll have to remove that as well. And then the goal is to take this DC jack and the cable, or the wire that runs from it, it runs all the way about 6-7 inches down to the motherboard. And so I don't know how this is connected to the motherboard, so I have to really take a look at some things. So I'm going to take this DC jack screw out, and then I should have all the other screws that I need that connect this motherboard to the base of this computer. So I want to make sure, I'm going to do a little quick review, make sure I have all the screws out and all the ribbon cables out, so that I can basically look at and lift this motherboard up, and then see how it connects to the DC jack wire, because there's a connector there that you can't really see the whole connector until you lift the motherboard up. And so I just basically looked at the Wi-Fi card again, make sure everything is lifted or disconnected there, no screws there, and the ribbon cable for the hard drive. And then I'm going to take the RAM modules out, and then in my case I decided to take the CMOS battery out too to reset the BIOS, just in case that might have been the reason why the speed of the processor was slowed down. So if I take that out, it can actually reset. So I figure it's going to take me a good hour to do this job, and so I'm taking the CMOS battery out and let it discharge while I'm doing my repair. And so after looking at all the screws and ribbon cables and things like that that I've taken out, just kind of looking again, make sure that also I noticed that there was one last little connector that I didn't notice, which was for the speaker. And so I had to disconnect the speaker connector as well, because that's connected to the motherboard. And so now I can actually have easy access to lift this motherboard up and take a look at the DC jack. And then once I've done that, I'm going to remove the DC jack, and you can see here that the connector is on one side here in the image. It basically connects to the motherboard, but the other side is the broken wire side. That's where the AC adapter connects to it. And so I took another image of this just to give a better view, to show in my case what the problem was. The wires are actually literally broken. It was just one last connection to the DC jack from one of these wires hanging on. So I don't know what would have happened if they were broken off entirely, but it doesn't matter because I'm taking it out and replacing it with a new DC jack anyway. And so once I did that and put it back in, then the goal is to basically be able to test this thing out. And so I put it back, buttoned it back up, just to basically the way I took it apart. And now I'm going to basically connect a replacement AC adapter to this DC jack, thinking that at this point that should take care of things, hopefully. So I button things up to for the most part. The videos give a good description of if you don't button it up entirely, you still can check this by connecting your AC adapters to your DC jack, just to be sure that it's making contact and it's getting voltage and so on. So in my case, I pretty much put this thing back together. So I'm just going to tell you, I didn't feel comfortable with all those things, but I put it back together and then connected the AC adapter, in this case a replacement AC adapter, to the computer. And when I did that, it's rebooted, and what I find was the same problem. I had the AC replacement adapter connected to the new DC jack, and the AC adapter is plugged in, but it still shows that it's not charging the battery. So not sure exactly where if this is something I've done wrong, or if it's just again the adapter. So I'm just looking at a few things and see again that the processor speed's been cut down still in half. So it's not working. I got the error message, same error message. Nothing's changed essentially. So I'm a little bit unhappy, disappointed here. And so I decided to just take a look at these two AC adapters, the original Dell one that came with the computer, and then the replacement AC adapter. And I noticed that there is a difference in the length of the barrels. The Dell adapter has a much shorter, well, probably by a 1.5 millimeters shorter barrel than the replacement AC adapter. So I'm thinking that could be another thing to take into account. And I didn't hear anybody mention that in any of the videos, but it was just my mistake, probably not paying attention to the length of the barrel when I ordered the replacement adapter. So I have to take that one myself. I think maybe other people would probably know to do that, and I didn't. So there's an error that I created on my own. So anyway, I just show that image just in case anyone else has that before they buy another adapter, even because adapters are less than 20 bucks. So it'd have been a cheap fix if that would have fixed it. And in this case, I find that my DC jack was busted. So you just reference that just in case anyone decides to do the same thing and order another adapter to check out how things working. But I decided to reconnect my Dell AC adapter back, since it had the shorter barrel, just to see if anything else, if that would improve the situation or maybe fix it. And so lo and behold, I could tell there was a difference when I connected the Dell AC adapter, because it's fit so much more snug. It's right up next to the laptop versus the other replacement adapter. It was about a millimeter, millimeter and a half away from the edge of the laptop. So once I did that, I noticed also that the Dell AC adapter connected much better, but it was charging the battery now. So that was the whole idea, and so it tells me that I did do a fairly reasonable job of putting in the new DC jack, and that this Dell adapter wasn't really the problem. It was the DC jack all along, but I wanted to take the least expensive route. So $20 AC adapter replacement may have fixed me, but it didn't. And so I just figured at this point now I'm in much better shape though. So I checked also the processor, and the processor is now running at the speed that it should. It's at roughly over 2 gigahertz. And so I actually noticed some clock speeds upwards of 2.7 even. So I'm feeling much better about things than I did before. And so I just wanted to reference that. This is the fix that worked well for me. But if for some reason you don't feel comfortable with doing this complete replacement, because I got to tell you, I didn't really up front feel too comfortable. I watched these videos that I list in the description probably 4 or 5 times easily each, and then just made a decision. And before I made that decision, I still needed use of this laptop, so I spent roughly about $80 on a part that I didn't know was really out there until I started doing a little more research on it. But it's basically an AC adapter that hooks to your battery, your Dell battery, laptop battery, and it's an external laptop battery charger. And so I was fortunate to find this. It's the only place I could find it was for sale out of Europe. So it took about, during the time I bought this, about 14 days to get it because the mail delivery was slow. But overall, you probably could get it sooner if you wanted to pay extra. But this Dell laptop battery connects your battery. You remove it from the battery is removed from the laptop, and it connects to the external laptop battery AC charger. And the charger itself has got about the same voltage and that your battery AC charger would have. So what it does though is you have to remove your battery and disconnect it, and you can't really use your laptop unless you have another battery to use while you're charging this battery. So I basically bought a replacement battery and charged it with this external laptop charger, and then I had use of another Dell battery, and so I actually could use the laptop without connecting a AC charger to charge it, because if I did that it would cut the processor speed in half. So I just basically removed the connection to the AC charger and put it in a battery that was charged while I was charging a second battery with this external laptop battery charger, and that served my purpose for right there. So if you get squeamish about doing this charge or repair, because that repair could, if you took it to a repair shop, it cost probably anywhere between $100 to $300, I'm sure, for someone to do this. And I didn't want to spend that much money on the laptop because the laptop's probably only worth brand new $400. So I decided to take the route of buying a replacement AC charger. That didn't work, and so the next step, I also decided to get at least order the DC jack in case I could replace it for less than $10, and then in the meantime bought this external laptop charger. And so the laptop charger for the battery worked really well, but it's just an inconvenience of having to, you got to shut it down and then reconnect after you put your new charged battery in and then start back up. So it's a little bit of an inconvenience there. So I got used to doing that for a little bit, but as I did that, my DC jack came in from being delivered, and I had the tools, and so I figured at this point, watching those videos, go as far as I was comfortable, and if anything else, if I decided it wasn't too comfortable, then that's basically the way this laptop was going to stay then. So it worked out well for me, but at least I give you a second option here in case you just don't feel comfortable and you spend $100 on just an external charger and buy maybe an extra battery for $20. So $120 would solve that situation, and you don't do any internal repair on your computer at all. Otherwise, I would think that if you have some confidence in these things and some tools, you can do it. I did it, so I feel pretty good about it now that I've done it. But at the time, just basically took my time and just made sure it didn't have any static. So the static wrist strap helped, and then the tools, having the right pry tools and things like that. So I hope this works for anybody who's having similar problems, and just want to thank the two fellows that I saw, that experts that put these videos out there. That was a help too.